The most dangerous Viltrumite who ever lived, the one guy in the whole species who treats compassion like a disease and would have made damn sure it didn't survive in anyone he trained. What if Omni-man was raised by Thragg? We're not just talking about a different Nolan here. We're talking about a different show, a different Earth, maybe no Earth at all. Like, we do these what if videos to stress test the story. Yank one thread and see how much falls apart. Sometimes it's a small change. A fight swings the other way, and somebody lives who shouldn't have. But this one's different. This one goes right for the throat of what Invincible is actually about. Because here's what the show keeps asking, over and over, 4 seasons running: can love survive inside a weapon? Can something soft stay alive inside something that was built to conquer? Nolan's the test case. He was made to be a tool for the Empire, and he broke. He picked his son over his mission. He picked Earth over Viltrum. And that choice, that failure, if you're looking at it from the Empire side, that's the engine that runs every single season. So what happens when you yank it out? What if there was never any love to survive? What if Nolan was raised by somebody who'd see that love as a sickness and burn it out of him before he ever left the planet? That's what we're getting into. We'll start with who Nolan actually is and what made him that way. Then we'll dig into Thragg, who he is or how he thinks and what growing up under him would really look like. After that, we're going full butterfly effect. Every relationship, every alliance, every turning point across 4 seasons run through the filter of a Nolan who shows up on Earth with nothing soft left in him. Quick heads up. The first chunk of this is grounded in confirmed show canon. Once we get past the setup, we're in what if territory. Educated guesswork built on what the show gives us, but pushed way past it. We'll be straight about that. If something's a guess, we'll call it a guess. Deal? Cool. Let's start with the Nolan we know. Nolan Grayson was born on Viltrum. His dad was a Viltrumite warrior. The show hasn't totally nailed down his lineage yet. His father's exact rank is still kind of an open thread as of season 4, but we know his dad died during the Scourge virus. That was the plague that ripped through the Viltrumite population and killed billions. And here's the part that matters, that death hurt Nolan in a way it wasn't supposed to. Yes, season 4 drops this flashback that completely changes how you see everything. Young Nolan, still basically a kid by their standards, goes through the Viltrumite rite of passage, and on Viltrum, that's not a ceremony, it's not a handshake and a diploma, it's a death match against your own parents. For real, full contact. Both of them come at him. His father chokes him, headbutts him, throws him around, but his mother is the one who really tries to end it. She pins him to a stairwell and just pounds him. She's not holding back. That is the point. By Viltrumite standards, that's not abuse. That's how it works. Like, on a planet where strength is the only thing that means anything, proving you can take a beating from the people who made you is how you get to call yourself a grown-up. Nolan's father actually pulls his mother off before she kills him, and she calls them both weak for it, and Nolan doesn't win. So he just doesn't die, and apparently that's enough. Then the Scourge virus hits. Billions of Viltrumites gone, and young Nolan, the kid who just barely survived getting his teeth kicked in by his own mom, he's out there helping throw bodies into space, including his dad's. The show holds on his face during this, and it's not subtle. He's grieving right there in the open, even though by that point, Viltrumite training should have beaten every bit of empathy out of him. He's supposed to be past feeling anything, but he's not. He's chucking his father's corpse into the void, and you can see it tearing him apart. That's the crack, right there. Before Earth, before Debbie, before Mark even exists as a possibility. Something in Nolan just didn't get with the program. Some part of him could still feel things, even though the Empire spent his whole life trying to make sure he couldn't. And you gotta understand what that training was supposed to do, because it ain't gentle. Viltrumite culture runs on a few rules, and every single one of them exists to kill the part of Nolan that survived. Strength equals worth. That's the whole deal. If your kid falls in battle, you're supposed to look at them and think they were weak, not grieve, dismiss. Love, emotional connection, that's weakness. That's what gets you killed. Kids grow up learning one thing: obey, fight, and don't you dare question any of it. Being seen as strong is the only source of pride you're allowed to have, and underneath all of that is the Great Purge, a civil war. The Viltrumites fought against themselves to weed out anyone they thought was weak, massive numbers, dead on purpose, and the ones who came out the other side, they built a whole identity around the idea that they deserve to exist because they killed everyone who couldn't keep up. That's the world Nolan grew up in. That's the machine that was supposed to grind out every soft thing about him. And it almost did. Almost. But the grief got through. And once it was in there, nothing they did could get it all the way back out. So Nolan gets shipped off to Earth. And the missions got more layers than we knew at first. Season 4 breaks down the whole thing. It's not just conquer this planet, there's two parts. First, figure out if Viltrumites can have kids with humans, because after the virus, their species is dying out and they need new blood. Second, get Earth ready for the Empire to roll in, breeding test first, conquest later. So Nolan builds a whole life. He becomes Nolan Grayson, travel writer, husband, dad, superhero. He links up with the Global Defense Agency, becomes Cecil Stedman's top asset, and spends 20 years as Omni-man, basically the strongest hero on the planet. He writes best-selling books about human history and culture, and here's the thing. He didn't study people the way a hunter studies prey, looking for weak points and kill shots. He studied them like somebody who was actually curious. Like, he wanted to understand them. That's a huge tell. 20 years of family dinners, baseball in the backyard with Mark, being married to Debbie, actually living as a person, not just a soldier pretending to be one. And sure, when the time came, he still killed the Guardians of the Globe. Season 1, Episode 1, cold, efficient. They were the only team that could have fought back against a Viltrumite invasion, so they had to go. But that kill happened inside a guy who'd spent 2 decades getting attached to the world he was supposed to sell out. He knew those people. He'd worked beside them. That matters. Those 20 years didn't build his ability to love from nothing. They fed something that was already there. That grief from his father's death, that was the seed. Earth just gave it sunlight. And that's what makes the season 1 finale hit so hard. Nolan's trying to beat the humanity out of Mark. He drags him through a train full of civilians. He's screaming Viltrumite talking points like a guy trying to convince himself. Think about the scale. Think about how long you'll live. Think about how meaningless all these little human lives are next to what we are. And Mark, half dead, blood all over his face, gets out those 6 words. You, Dad, I'd still have you. And everything just stops. The programming crashes. 20 years of actually loving his family wins the argument all at once, and every wall the Empire built inside Nolan comes down in a second. He can't kill his kid. He leaves Earth crying. After that, Nolan basically goes full traitor. At least that's what the Empire would say. He joins up with the coalition of planets, the alliance that's been fighting Viltrumite expansion across the galaxy. He teams up with Alan the alien, starts handing over everything he knows about his own people to the folks trying to beat them. And by season 4, when he finds out Thetis, the coalition's own leader, was the one who cooked up the Scourge virus that killed his dad and billions of other Viltrumites, he loses it. Not in a I disagree with this strategy way, in a personal way. Because even after switching sides and fighting against everything Viltrum stands for, Nolan's still tangled up in the loss that broke him loose in the first place. That wound never closed. It just ended up shaping everything about who he became. So that's the guy we're proposing to replace. Now let's talk about the replacement. Thragg is the Grand Regent of the Viltrum Empire. He rolls in during season 4, voiced by Lee Pace, and the second he shows up, the entire feel of the show shifts. Every Viltrumite we've met before, Nolan included, even at his absolute worst, they all look soft compared to this dude. Thragg was made from the ground up to be the strongest Viltrumite alive. Not one of the strongest. His whole life was one big program designed to produce the most dangerous warrior the species had ever seen. And the guy nobody would ever dare question. He survived the Great Purge, he survived the Scourge virus. 2 extinction level events, and this man walked through both of them like they were traffic. His philosophy's dead simple. Strength is the only thing that counts. Period. Raw, physical, I can end you, so I'm in charge. Strength. Yet there's nothing underneath it. No nuance, no wiggle room. It's if you're the strongest, you lead. If you're not, you shut up and do what you're told. And the scary part, he's not a hothead about it. That's what makes him worse than some raging brute. Thragg is calm, controlled, patient. He never raises his voice because he never needs to. Lee Pace has talked about playing him as somebody whose intensity is just always on. Quiet, pulled back, but constant. Thragg doesn't flex. He's already the most dangerous thing in whatever room he's standing in, and everybody knows it. People don't follow him because they believe in him. They follow him because the other option is dying. Compare how he dealt with the Scourge virus to how Nolan handled it. Same disaster, same devastation. Nolan threw his dad's body into space and fell apart. Thragg. He quarantined the sick, not to save them, to stop the strong ones from catching it. That's it. The species surviving mattered. Individual people didn't. Efficiency over feelings. Every single time. Now, the show does hint that Thragg isn't totally hollow, and in the comics there's this moment where he shows something that looks almost like comfort toward his daughter Ursal after she loses someone. It's tiny, blink, and you miss it, and honestly the main thing it does is make the emptiness around it feel bigger. It's one little flicker of warmth in a guy who's basically a void shaped like a person. Whether Thragg truly can't feel anything, or whether he buried his feelings so deep so long ago that the difference stopped mattering, the show doesn't give us a straight answer on that, but it does tell us that Viltrumites as a whole seem to want love. They want connection. They force themselves away from it because their whole culture tells them it's a weakness they can't afford. Thragg's just the far end of that. The version where the suppression didn't just work, it basically is him at this point. To Thragg, compassion isn't a flaw you keep in check. It's a sickness you wipe out. So picture that guy raising a kid, not just any kid, Nolan. Take the standard Viltrumite childhood, which already involves getting beaten half to death by your parents as a graduation ceremony, and growing up in a culture that says sadness makes you pathetic, and hand all of that to a man who thinks even that isn't tough enough. Thragg wouldn't just train Nolan, he'd hollow him out. Every flicker of softness, every hesitation, every trace of the feelings that Nolan's real father's death left behind, hunted down and burned out of him. The rite of passage wouldn't be something Nolan barely scrapes through, it'd be something Thragg builds specifically to make sure nothing sentimental survives it. What walks out the other side? A Nolan Grayson with nothing left underneath, no buried grief, no hidden ability to care about anything, sitting there waiting for the right planet to wake it up, just the mission, just the rules, just conquest. And that's where the whole show either falls apart or turns into something you wouldn't recognize. Everything from this point on is speculation. We're working off what the show gives us, but we're pushing way past where it actually goes. If something's a guess, it's a guess. Let's get into it. First question, would Thragg even send this version of Nolan to Earth? Think about what that mission actually needed. 20 plus years of pretending to be a human, building real relationships, smiling at your neighbors, writing books, playing the longest possible game in a way that demands patience and emotional flexibility with a species Thragg barely considers worth noticing. There's a solid chance Thragg would look at a mission like that and think it was a waste of a perfectly good weapon. Why park your best soldier in some suburb for 2 decades when you could just send him to kick the planet's door down? So there's 2 versions. In one, Nolan never comes to Earth at all. He gets sent somewhere else. A straight up invasion, some frontline command. Earth never meets Omni-man. Mark never gets born. the show just doesn't exist. But that's the boring version. The interesting one is where Thragg still sends him with the same job. Test if they can breed with humans, prepare the planet for takeover. But this Nolan shows up empty. Same assignment. Totally different guy behind the wheel. Let's run with that. He still needs a human partner. That's what the mission calls for. In the version of the story we know, that partner was Debbie, and the show says it straight out. She's the one who taught him how to love. She was the whole foundation, the person who showed him life could actually mean something. 20 years of marriage, of being cared about, of having someone see him as a real person and not just a weapon wearing a polo shirt, that's what gave the "you, Dad" moment its weight. Debbie wasn't a background character in Nolan's change. She was the change. A Thragg-raised Nolan might still take a human partner. The job requires it. But whoever she is, she's not a wife. She's a means to an end. An instrument. Nolan once called Debbie a pet, and in the show, that was a lie he threw at her because he was trying to convince himself the mission mattered more than she did. It was cruel because it wasn't true. Under Thragg's version, that word wouldn't be a lie. It wouldn't even be cruel. It'd just be accurate. No warmth piling up over the years, no slow wearing down of the soldier underneath, none of those little moments that add up. The quiet mornings, the way she laughed at dinner, the way she'd put her hand on his arm when he didn't even know he needed it. None of that. Just a Viltrumite checking a box with a species he's been raised to see as raw material. And think about what that means for the woman in this version. In the show, Debbie's arc is one of the most underrated things Invincible does. Her rage when the truth drops, or I guess her grief over 20 years she thought was real. The way she refuses to just disappear, refuses to let Nolan or anyone else redefine her as meaningless after 2 decades of building a life together. That whole arc only works because the relationship was real. Even the betrayal only hurts because there was something genuine to betray. But here's the irony, and it's the part I keep circling back to. Thragg stays in charge for one reason. Nobody's strong enough to take him. That's it. That's the whole system. The strongest Viltrumite rules, and everyone else falls in line because challenging Thragg means dying. But there's one more thing to sit with, and the show gives us just enough to make it genuinely creepy. It keeps hinting that Viltrumites, all of them, not just the ones who went soft, actually want connection underneath everything. They want love, they want closeness, they shove all of that down because their culture says they have to, not because it's who they really are at the core. The rules tell them to suppress it, the training tells them to suppress it, everything about their world tells them to suppress it, but the wanting doesn't die. It just goes underground, and we've seen what happens every time it claws its way back up. It rewrites everything. Turns soldiers into dads and conquerors into defectors, and the Empire's best asset into its worst nightmare. If that's true, if that wanting is wired into the species, not just into the ones who happen to be weak, then maybe even a Thragg-raised Nolan can't be totally sealed off. Maybe something goes in a different way, like not through a wife, not through a son, maybe through something so tiny and unexpected that Thragg never thought to build a wall against it. A sunset on a planet he was sent to wreck. A random act of kindness from somebody who had no idea what they were looking at. Something that sneaks past the armor because it's too small for the armor to notice, or maybe not. Maybe that's just wishful thinking. Maybe the whole point is that some people only get saved by accidents they didn't pick and didn't earn. A dad who died and left grief behind when he shouldn't have. A planet that happened to be full of people who love each other. A son who said the right 6 words at the exact right second. Without those accidents, the weapon stays a weapon, period. And the universe is full of weapons that never got their accident, never got their Earth, never got their mark. We just don't make shows about those ones because there'd be nothing to watch. Invincible only works because the real Nolan was never fully Thragg's kind of Viltrumite. He was always carrying something extra, something small and stubborn and, by every Viltrumite standard out there, totally worthless. Turns out it was the most important thing about him. So here's my question, and I really do want to hear this one. Do you think Thragg-raised Nolan could ever crack? Could anything get through? Or is the whole point that some people only get saved by the accidents of their own story, and without those, it just goes dark, tell me in the comments. This one's got no clean answer. That's exactly why I want yours is. If you're new here, we do invincible breakdowns like this all the time. Deep dives, what ifs, character studies, all of it. Subscribe if you're into that. Hit the bell so you actually see the next one drop. And if this video made you think even a little, smash that like on your way out. It helps way more than you'd think. Catch you in the next one.